how's it going? I'm Josh from Modestep, and I'm going to run through today my track for Disciple Alliance, which is called Lost My Way. What I tend to do with most of my tracks, I've got this set up as a template, is I have all my drums in one group, everything that needs to be sidechained in another group, and that contains usually my vocals, synths, bass and effects. And then outside of that group we then have sub. Sometimes I put my vocals outside of the sidechain group depending on the type of tune it is, but the sidechain didn't really interfere too much with the vocals on this one, so I just kept it inside the sidechain group. The majority of this track was actually built using my new sample pack, which is called Bass Evolution. And pretty much the original idea came from a little synth loop that I had made for the pack, like this. And actually, if I remove all of the effects from it, it doesn't sound too different. I've just EQ'd a bit, added some distortion, some reverb. This is my new favourite reverb from Slate, the Illustrious plates. Really awesome, nice, high detail sounding reverb. So I basically worked off that idea, added a nice re-stick underneath it, which is pretty basic serum with some high unison triangles. A bit of cut off filter here, a low filter. What else do we have? I always add like a nice vinyl sound. So here we've got like an old sample that I've had for a while that just adds like a nice bit of noise to the background of the tune. I feel like that is quite important in getting tunes to sound a bit more organic. And yeah, I always miss it whenever there's like some noise missing from the tune. I feel like it adds a lot of depth to it. But yeah, so I basically built off that idea, which was that synth, and used it for like the first part of the drop. And I kind of then went and developed the idea further. I used the same synth loop and made it into this kind of like slightly more robotic sounding version of itself. That was just done with Serum Effects. So I added some hyper to it, some chorus, distortion, a tiny touch. And here the comb is doing quite a bit of the heavy lifting of that sound, I believe. Yep, so I've got a comb filter on that. What else do I have? The bass line, which isn't in my sample pack. So these are one of the only actual sounds I made for the tune. Super basic. What I do here is I usually have, to make these screechy sounds, something low, something high like that, and then they both run into a group here, which has Serum Effects again with just distortion on it like that and some OTT. And it ends up sounding like that. What else do we have here? So all the drums came from my my sample pack, I believe. Let's have a look. Got my kick drum here. Oh, my kick drum's actually not doing anything. So it looks like I set this up just kind of like as a ghost channel. So here, yeah, I've got a ghost thing that basically plays nothing when the MIDI's hit, and that triggers the sidechain on the main sidechain group. But it looks like most of the drums are actually just coming from a straight up loop. Yeah, so I used one of the loops from my pack combined with one of the top loops from my pack to make the drums. Very simple. And I added a few extra elements to it. Just this hi-hat that's got some delays on it. Just to add a bit of texture. And I believe these are like some weird little fills. Yeah. So those kind of pop in at the end of the phrase. give it more of a live drum feel. The only vocals that I recorded for this were actually the verse. The chorus is again from my sample pack, and it's just one sample that I've manipulated over and over and over and over again to sound like it's different every time. So if I just play those by themselves.
I think I lost my way. I think I lost my way.
So this is kind of a group of layers here with the original sample here, which is...
I think I lost my way.
And then I've just kind of like manipulated it, put it up octaves and down octaves.
I think I lost my way.
And use the formant section here to make it sound different depending on what octave or what frequency I've got it playing at. Also got some of these tails from the original sample. They're all pitched in differently. And then a layer of like reverse stuff. And then here's what I recorded for the tune.
It all feels empty without you. This feeling's ripping me apart.
And the processing is very similar to the processing that I would have shown you guys on my previous vocal processing video. And if you want to watch that video, click the link somewhere that's on the screen. And yeah, you can find out how I went in on all the vocal processing for this stuff, but I won't go into too much detail. But my secret weapon, big up Waves, for the Maserati VX1, which is my go-to vocal plugin. Pretty much throw it on, and yeah, with some OTT and some tune as well, which is set to the key of the song, which is D sharp. That just stops my awful singing from being so awful and just makes it a little bit prettier. So yeah, it looks like I just kind of layered this a little bit.
It all feels empty without
I seem to remember when I was recording this, my voice wasn't feeling so great. So usually when my voice isn't feeling so good, I make up with it by layering a bunch of the same thing over and over again. And it kind of adds a bit of strength to the vocal.
It all feels so empty without you, without you. Leaving me in the dark. I think I
But give or take, this is kind of just like a sample pack demo song, really. There's like very little that's used in this tune that isn't my own samples. In fact, I do believe there's only one, and it's an Impact, and it's from a Barely Alive sample pack. And I don't know why I decided I was just going to use all my own samples apart from one Barely Alive Impact, but I guess my Impacts didn't do the right job, and I found them in his sample pack. So thank you, Barely Alive, for providing me with the Impact for this tune. Oh, and some somatics in there as well. But the majority of the stuff here, like all these impacts, this downlifter, it's all from my sample pack. Uplifters here as well. My master doesn't really have anything on it, just an EQ, and that's literally it. I don't even have any limiting or anything. All of the limiting and loudness stuff in my projects, I tend to put on my sidechain group, and I put them before the sidechain. So that means that none of the limiting is affecting any of my drums. It's not affecting my sub. And it also means that if I low cut before going into like my loudness processing, I can actually get it louder, because a lot of the low end rumble is what causes stuff to distort when you try and get it louder. So if you start eliminating that, and like we don't really need that because the sub's covering most of it and the kick drum's covering most of it, then yeah, it's just much easier to get rid of all of that stuff and then run it into saturation. So this is all part of my template. I have like a pre-side chain which has like all of my loudness stuff in it, which is basic really, just a saturator, a transient shaper, some camel fat, good old trusty camel fat with some tube turned up. And then here is like where I do the low cut stuff, but it doesn't even look like I've done it on this tune, you know. It's just what I usually do, but it looks like I've turned it down, so it's not even affecting the track. Then I got a Pro MB just to glue everything together. That's just the same as an OTT really, but a little less dramatic. Then OTT to just a tiny touch of OTT just to glue it even more. And then I've got this sidechain rack which I built, and it's just using LFO tool to sidechain everything. My sub is also a rack that I have made, but it's basically just a sine wave fundamental with some noise mixed into it, and then thrown into some saturation. And that's pretty much the entire tune. I have done very little as far as sound design goes. I tend to, these days, do all of that in other projects and then just deal with the audio. And it really is working for me. I think this tune took me about maybe 8 to 9 hours from start to finish. And that's just because I spent weeks and weeks collecting these samples and making sure they all sound really nice. And it just became a drag and drop job, you know. It's just feel what you want to feel, hear what you want to hear, and then you've just got all of these pre-made loops and samples that you can go to just to get the idea down. But yeah, very simple tune, very, very basic way of doing things, but I often find that the more simple, the better. So yeah, that's Lost My Way. That's how I made the tune. If you like what you've heard, make sure you like, subscribe, you know what it is. And also, if you like the sample pack, should be available either now or it's coming soon, depending on when this video comes out. But it's Modestep Bass Evolution, and it has all of the samples minus that Barely Alive impact. And you can go grab that now and remake this entire song if you want to. So there it is. Thank you very much for watching, and make sure you watch some of the other tutorials on this channel and cop some merch if you like it too. Goodbye!